Hi students, this is A. Mandari Kumar Rajesh. I hope you are all doing well with the blessings of Lord Almighty. In this video, we are going to discuss chapter 1, especially the topic called sexual reproduction in plants. In general, sexual reproduction means two parents are involved in that process. One parent acts as male, one parent acts as female. So in sexual reproduction, two parents are involved. One parent acts as male, another parent acts as female. Then the male parent possesses male reproductive structure. The female parent possesses female reproductive structure. And that structure are able to produce gametes. These two reproductive structures are able to produce gametes, and that process is called as gametogenesis. And that process is called as gametogenesis. Production of gametes is called as gametogenesis. So the male reproductive structures are able to produce male gamete, and it is haploid in nature. Female reproductive structures are able to produce female gamete. It also haploid in nature due to a process called meiosis or reduction division. Due to meiosis or reduction division, the gametes are haploid in nature. Then fusion of male and female gametes takes place, results in the formation of zygote, and they are diploid in nature. So the fusion of male and female gamete results in the formation of zygote, and that process is called as fertilization. And that process is called as fertilization. This is how sexual reproduction takes place in plants and animals. Now I am going to tell about the sexual reproduction takes place in lower plants like algae and bryophytes. How sexual reproduction takes place in lower plants like algae and bryophytes. So we are going to discuss the sexual reproduction in algae and bryophytes. So algae are predominantly present in aquatic environment, and they are considered as lower plants. Algae are otherwise called as thallophytes because the algae plant body is not differentiated into root, stem, leaf. The plant body is said to be thallus. That is why they are called as thallophyta or thallophytes. In algae, they contain the reproductive structure called gametangia. They contain the reproductive structure called gametangia. Gametangia is a specialized organ. They are able to produce gametes. They are able to produce gametes. So the male gametangia are represented by sign called plus in some algae. Male gametangia are represented by the sign plus. They are represented by plus strain. While in the case of female, they are represented by the sign minus, and they are represented by minus strain. In some cases of algae, the male reproductive structures are represented by the name antheridium. While in the case of female reproductive structures, they are represented by the name oogonium. In algae, in some cases, in some type of algae, the male reproductive structure or the male gametes are represented by the sign plus, and they are considered as plus strain. While in the case of female gametes, they are represented by the sign minus, and they are called as minus strain. While in some case of algae, the male reproductive structures are represented by the name Anthridium. While in the case of female, they are represented by Oogonium. It is an advanced type of sexual reproduction in algae, and that type is called as oogamous, type. While in the case of bryophytes, the oogamous type is strictly take place. In bryophytes, the sexual reproduction takes place by oogamous types. In bryophytes, the male reproductive structures represented by the name Anthridium, while in the case of female reproductive structures represented by the name Archegonium. So in bryophyte, the female reproductive structures are called as Archegonium. In algae, sexual reproduction takes place, that is the fusion of gametes takes place externally. That is why that fertilization is called as external fertilization, and they lack embryos. Algae lack embryos because the fertilization takes place externally. The male gametegia releases male gamete, the female gametegia releases the female gamete in the water. Fusion of the two gametes takes place, results in the formation of zygote, and that zygote develops into a new young one directly. So there is no chance for embryo development. While in the case of bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperm, angiosperm, the male gamete reaches the female reproductive structure and it fuses with female gamete, and that fertilization takes place internally, results in the formation of embryo. So in bryophyte, the bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperm and angiosperms are called as embryophyta. While in the case of algae, they lack embryo. Then in our book, they have given 3 types of fusion of gametes. They are isogamy, anisogamy and oogamy. Let us talk about the types of fusion of gametes in lower plants like algae and bryophytes. There are 3 types of fusion of gametes. They are isogamy, anisogamy and oogamy. Isogamy means, iso means similar, identical. Gamy means fusion of gametes. In isogamy, fusion of gametes takes place between both morphologically and physiologically similar gametes, and that condition is called as isogamy. In anisogamy, fusion of gametes takes place between morphologically or physiologically dissimilar gametes, and that condition is called as anisogamy. You can find one gamete looks larger in size, another gamete looks smaller in size, morphologically or physiologically dissimilar. While in the case of oogamy, fusion of gametes takes place between both morphologically and physiologically dissimilar gametes, and that condition is called as oogamy. This oogamy is an advanced type of sexual reproduction. This oogamy resembles anisogamy, but the major difference between anisogamy and the oogamy is, in anisogamy you can find the male gamete are smaller than the female gamete, but the two gametes possess flagella. The two gametes are motile in nature. While in the case of oogamy, the female gametes are larger in size when compared to male gamete, and they do not possess flagella, While in the case of male gamete, they are smaller in size and they possess flagella. That is the major difference between anisogamy and oogamy. Let me teach you a reproductive part of a higher plant, especially angiosperm. In angiospermic plant, the reproductive part is said to be flower, because in flower only we are able to find androecium and gynoecium. Androecium represents the male reproductive structure, gynoecium represents the female reproductive structure. So in higher plants, the flower is said to be reproductive part. Then actually a flower is considered as modification of shoot. Actually a flower is considered as modification of shoot. In many cases, in many flowers, both male and female reproductive structures are present, and that flower is said to be bisexual flower. And that flower is said to be bisexual flower. In some cases, in some flowers, either male or female reproductive structures only present, and that flower is said to be unisexual flower. And that flower is said to be unisexual flower. Then a flower is generally bears a long or short axis. Bears a long or short axis, and that axis has two parts, namely thalamus and pedicel. So this region is said to be thalamus. Thalamus is otherwise called as receptacle, and they are dome shaped. On the thalamus only all the floral parts are arranged. On the thalamus only all the floral parts are arranged. They are dome shaped. Then the next part is said to be pedicel. Pedicel is nothing but a stalk of a flower. Pedicel is nothing but stalk of a flower. A typical flower must contain 4 whorls. A typical flower must contain 4 whorls. They are calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. Let me tell you all the 4 whorls one by one. Calyx, it is the outermost whorl of the flower. So here you can find the calyx, and it is the outermost whorl. It consists of sepals. The single unit of calyx is called as sepals. A single unit of calyx is called as sepals. Sepals are collectively called as calyx. Sepals are collectively called as calyx. The function of calyx is protection. The function of calyx is protection. So calyx can protect the floral whorl in the bud stage. So calyx can protect corolla, androecium and gynoecium. Next, corolla. Corolla is the next inner whorl. So next to calyx, corolla is present. It consists of petals. A single unit of corolla is said to be petals. Petals are collectively called as corolla. The main function of corolla is attraction, because corolla are brightly colored. It can attract insects and it helps in pollination. So the main function of the corolla is attraction. It can attract insect and it helps in pollination. Then the second function is it can protect the reproductive whorls in the bud stage. It can protect reproductive whorls in the bud stage. So that is the function of corolla. Then the next whorl is the third whorl is called as androecium. Androeciums are nothing but collection of stamens. So collection of stamens are said to be androecium. Stamen contains, so this is the stamen, it contains anther and filament. So it is, this structure is called as filament and this structure is called as anther. They are collectively called as stamens. Stamens are collectively called as androecium. So androecium represents male reproductive structure. Then gynoecium. Gynoecium is otherwise called as pistil or corpus. So gynoecium contains three important structures called stigma. The stigma is the receptive organ for pollen grain. So on the stigma only the pollen grains are deposited. Then it contains stale. Finally it contains ovary. Inside the ovary we are able to find ovule. Inside the ovary we are able to find ovule. Then pollination takes place. After the pollination, fertilization takes place. Actually, in higher plants, sexual reproduction involves three stages. They are pre-fertilization stage. The second stage is called as fertilization, and the third stage is said to be post fertilization. So in next video we are going to discuss these three stages. So that's all about today's video. If you have any doubt regarding this topic, please let me know. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you.